We would like to call the board meeting to order, and if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent prayer. You remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. The first item on the agenda is a consent agenda. We have minutes of the December 19th work session and regular meeting.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I did receive a few edits, and if you give me just a second, I will just briefly share those publicly here. Trustee Swanson requested that the photos are attached for the Metroact thing that we discussed last time, that the test results that Attorney Winters referenced be included, and then Supervisor Stumbo had an edit to work session minutes on page 1. Please add, after much discussion, Supervisor Stumbo stated, the second page on the third paragraph, to just make the sentence around the master plan read a little clearer. Page 4, to discuss the road right-of-ways and AAT pulling permits to provide more context for that. And then under the regular meeting minutes, on page 3, paragraph 2, Attorney Winters clarifying his statement regarding the lawsuit against properties on Michigan Ave and Minion. And page 6, requesting to amend the Township Board policy, changing the first sentence in the motion and how it was worded. And then for page 7, adding more context to the conversation. And we did clarify, Trustee Swanson, you've only voted no on the Metro Act, and I think that was accurately reflected. And then rewording the motion for the budget amendment. So we just wanted to share those out loud publicly here, and we will make those changes and add those attachments that were requested.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is her mic on?
In the section that's the Board of Trustee minutes, number 2, I think, or page 2.
The regular meeting.
Yeah, there's where resident Karen Lovejoy Rowe was speaking and said something that we hired a lobbyist, and the lobbyist is capitalized, but it's just, there's no name of it, so it's got to be the regular one. And then I think there's another part where, how you put see attached, so I think there's another place where you need the photos because they're see attached. So there's another place. I think it might be part 5. I don't have my computer going yet, so.
Okay, thank you. And I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes that we stated.
We have a motion. Is there support Swanson? Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Winters isn't here for the general legal update. New business number 1 is Resolution 2023-25, which is the adoption of the 2024 through 2028 Charter Township Parks and Recreation Master Plan.
I have a resolution, sorry. I was looking for something. I got a little out of my section here. All right, I have resolution number 2023-25, adoption of the 2024 through 2028 Ypsilanti Charter Township Park and Recreation Master Plan. At a regular meeting of the Ypsilanti Charter Township Board of Trustees, Washington County, Michigan, held at the Tilden R. Stumbo Civic Center, 7200 South Huron River Drive, Ypsilanti, Michigan, on the 19th day of December 2023 at 7 p.m. Whereas the Charter Township has undertaken a planning process to determine the recreation and natural resource conservation needs and desires of its residents during a 5-year period covering the years 2024 through 2028. And whereas the Ypsilanti Charter Township began the process of developing a community recreation plan in accordance with the most recent guidelines developed by the Department of Natural Resources and made available to local communities. And whereas the residents of Ypsilanti Township were provided with a well-advertised opportunity during the development of a draft plan to express opinions, ask questions, and discuss all aspects of the Recreation and Natural Resource Conservation Plan. And whereas the public was given a well-advertised opportunity and reasonable accommodations to review the final draft plan for a period of at least 30 days, and whereas a public hearing was held on December 19, 2023 at the Tilden R. Stumbo Civic Center to provide an opportunity for all residents of the planning area to express opinions, ask questions, and discuss all aspects of the Ypsilanti Charter Township Park and Recs Master Plan. And whereas the Ypsilanti Charter Township has developed the plan as a guideline for improving recreation and enhancing natural resource conservation for the township, and whereas after the public hearing, the Board of Trustees voted to adopt said 2024 through 2028 Ypsilanti Charter Township Park and Rec Master Plan. Now therefore be it resolved that the Ypsilanti Charter Township hereby adopts the 2024 through 2028 Ypsilanti Charter Township Park and Rec Master Plan. I'd so move the resolution.
Motion Rowe.
Support.
Support Eldridge. Mr. Hines? And
Thanks. So yes, we have the edited plan from the December 19th meeting where it was voted to bring back to tonight's meeting. So we took feedback gathered at that meeting as well as some feedback given by Supervisor Stumbo and made the changes where applicable. Some of those changes were providing more clarity between the township, the city of Ypsilanti, Washtenaw County, and their resources. Made sure that the updated admin structure was accurate to what our current administrative structure is now. We added the grant history table. We added more clarifications on which parks currently have projects planned for them in the upcoming year to 2 years. Minor text changes. We changed the action plan column to more of a priority instead of a time frame. And then they filled out all the table and map references, replacing the double X with the actual accurate page number. And Liz is here today if there are any more specific questions on the plan, but happy to answer as best I can.
are there questions and comments? Trustee Swanson?
I appreciate the work that was done on the edits on the report. Thank you for that. It's a beautiful report with the pictures and everything in the park. My only reservation is, which isn't going to hold it up, is that since we're moving to a new format where we're not outlining like specific plans for the 5 years, I want to just go on the record saying that we're going to have to watch really closely to make sure that that change in philosophy works when we look in 5 years. Well, when someone looks in 5 years to see if that works, because we could have competing interests and other things. It's a shift that is good, but I want to make sure that I say we need to be really careful that we monitor that to make sure that, because there aren't clear-cut identified priorities, it's very difficult to get all of the work done in a 5-year time period. So we'll need to make sure we pay attention to that. But thank you very much for the work.
Thank you.
Other comment? Hearing none, we have a motion and support to approve the adoption of the 2024 through 2028 Parks and Recreation Master Plan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2 is request to approve the master agreement with Aldi, which includes the development agreement, easements, covenants, and restrictions, and the easement agreement. Motion Rowe, support Eldridge. Jason is here to give us
Good evening,
Last
Township
update.
Board of Trustees. Jason Icoangeli, the Township's Planning Director. Before you this evening is sort of, we call it the Master Development Agreement, but it's actually made up of separate agreements that include the actual development agreement, the easement covenants and restrictions, and then the easement agreement that ties in all of the public easements. All three of these documents sort of join together to form a master development agreement. Typically, development agreements that the township uses for like planned developments are very comprehensive, and they include all of the information that's in these documents in one standalone development agreement. However, this particular process that the township has gone through with Aldi is different in the respect that we are as the township or the property owner, and we had to negotiate the covenants and restrictions at the time of the purchase agreement ahead of selling the property to Aldi because they had some concessions that they wanted to have before they entered into a purchase agreement. Some of those concessions that you would find in the covenants and restrictions are things like land use restrictions, where they would like the township not to sell property to another grocery retailer immediately adjacent to their store while they're there, which that's not too uncommon to have a non-competition clause for the sale of property. Other things that are listed in there in the covenants and restrictions are things like the development of the private driveway entrance to the Seaver Farm property and the responsibilities and rights that go along with that. Including how maintenance is performed, how the maintenance costs are divvied up between property owners and future property owners, and then the responsibilities of the property owners in the development now and then in the future. And then it also tie bars the final site plan to that agreement and holds Aldi to the responsibility of developing the property to the context of the final site plan. And again, that goes into the development agreement as well. The development agreement is sort of a contract between the township and the developer on how the development process of the site is going to go. So it outlines the conditions of development and construction, the bonds that they're going to put forth, the easements that they're going to grant to the township, and then the overall construction process, how that is to proceed and then maintain the site amendments or the site development parts of it in the future. So it kind of goes over a comprehensive way of having an agreement between the township and the developer about how the actual construction and then the future maintenance of the site is to proceed. So it kind of gets everybody onto equal footing as to what is expected out of each other. And in turn, the development agreement at the end says that the township will do such things as provide timely inspections and things of that nature during the construction process so that the developer has an awareness that the township is vested in their project once the agreement is executed. And then the easement agreement is a comprehensive package of easements that will be dedicated back to the township after the construction of the infrastructure is put in place, including the sidewalks, the bike path along Huron Street, and then the easement area for public art will all be deeded back to the township so that it'll be public property and publicly maintained. And that's not uncommon for the township to take easements for public pathways so that they're under the township's responsibility. We went through a pretty, as Mr. Winters will tell you, went through a lot of easements for pathways along Washtenaw Avenue when they did the, with property owners to get the easements in order to install the sidewalk portions when they were filling in the gaps along Washington Avenue. So it's not uncommon at all for the township to accept easements for public sidewalks and bike paths. So that was sort of like the 30,000-foot view of these agreements. If you have questions or more specific questions about portions of those agreements, I'm happy to attempt to answer them, along with Mr. Winters, who knows them verbatim.
All right, questions or comments? Mr. Winters, do you have anything to add to?
Well, I would just, from an overarching standpoint, this property, of course, was acquired, I think, back in 2002. It was the so-called Seaver Farm, and at the time it was acquired, it came about because the property owners originally wanted to sell this property to a mobile home developer, and they had plans to build 1,200 mobile homes on this site. And we went to court on that issue. We won. At the end of the day, they approached us about whether or not we had an interest in acquiring this property. And all that I would say right now is it's been a long 20-some years to see another development come along. Am I talking okay? Closer. Closer?
Yes, yes, there you go.
Yeah, I'll start all over. No. The bottom line is that this is probably a culmination of at least 2+ decades of a lot of visions by previous township boards, as well as the current township board, that the idea would be that someday we would actually have a more of a developed commercial corridor, as well as have other areas for open space, et cetera. And I think right now, it was a year ago, this past month, in December, that we signed a real estate purchase agreement, Supervisor Stumbo and Clerk Rowe. It's been about 18 months in the making, and I think everybody has probably heard the same question that we have, when is Aldi's going to come? Obviously, if this is approved this evening, there'll be a real estate closing scheduled in the next week or so. They're anxious to get going. They want to be in the ground by the springtime. And as you might expect, there are other developers who want to follow the path of Aldi. They're contacting the township also, looking at the north side of Brinker Way. So there's been a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of drafts back and forth. There's been a lot of phone conversations. There's been a lot of moments that we weren't quite sure if we were on the same path. But through it all, I think the township has negotiated a great development agreement. There's going to be a benefit to the community for this grocery store. I think the competition that it will bring is a great thing. And I think right now it will definitely jumpstart that corridor and the whole Seaver Farm development along the lines that we somewhat envisioned back in 2002. So at this point in time, I think it would be, again, it's in proper form for the board's consideration.
Trustee Swanson?
So when you were talking about the clause they wanted in about not having another store in the area, does that stay like with the property, or is that an agreement we have with Aldi? Because, in time, buildings sometimes don't stay what they are. And so does that lock us in forever, or is it just for this piece of property for that?
That's a good question. So this agreement, the covenants and restrictions would be with just Aldi as the other side of the the other side of the agreement, the other signer to it. So if Aldi ever left and that became something else, the covenants and restrictions would not apply to that clause, because this is specifically with Aldi.
I would like to say two things. One is, Mr. Winters is right, a lot of people are asking, when is Aldi coming? Because just to have competition for Kroger is good, and then they'll step up their game, we hope. And a lot of things that people ask me is, why aren't they going on Liberty Square or in another location? And we don't determine where they're going to locate. They said they're too close to Belleville Aldi. to go there. And then there's Carpenter, so there's a distance that they choose in order to locate their businesses. However, today, someone asked about a grocery store on Ecorse. There's no promise, it's just an inquiry, but it seems like people are possibly looking in other areas for a grocery store. So if that happened, that would be absolutely great. And then I also want to say that to Mr. Winters, how much time and effort has been put into this, because like he said, 2002 is when the vision was to have this property developed, and here we are, 21 years later, and it's the first sale of the property. And that's when we found out that the storm system that we created for all the property there would only allow one, because they changed the regs. So lots of things have changed in 21 years, but I do think this is a spark plug for future development, creation of jobs, and choices for groceries. A lot of our residents go to the one in Belleville, depending on where they live. They live on the west side, they go to the one on Carpenter. I go to both to see what's on sale, but they're out of products at one, you can go to the other and sometimes get it. So having this choice, I think, is going to be great. And I love the idea that they're, in the negotiations, they're putting in the road that goes to the rest of the property. And they're also putting in the looped water system, the utilities, to allow the future development. And that's another thing that has changed since 2001, is a loop system is required by YCUA, and it's a best practice for water distribution and quality of water in pipes. And if there's a break, they can turn it off in one area, not affect the entire area. So these are all good investments that will help with the future development of that property. Finally, those of you who don't know, Jason, this is leaving us after 3 years, but he's a township resident. He was on our planning commission for
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
yeah. So I thought you were with us longer, and I just want to thank you for your service to the township and to the board and everyone here. It's been a pleasure. I wish you nothing but the best for your family.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it wasn't an easy decision for me, and I enjoy working here, and yeah, it's been great. I think the planning department is on solid footing, so I think you should have no trouble at all
I
finding another
appreciate it.
director. Yeah,
Appreciate your public service. I know you're going in the private sector,
I am.
so that's a change, and but we wish you nothing but the best.
Thank
and,
you.
Appreciate your service. So
Thank you.
we have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Number 3 is Resolution 2024-01, which is owner's dam safety.
I have Resolution 2024-01, Owner Dam Safety Program, whereas the Charter Township of Ypsilanti in Washtenaw County, Michigan, currently holding a license with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, to operate the Ford Lake Hydroelectric Project, number 5334, and whereas the FERC requires the Charter Township of Ypsilanti to develop, implement, fund, and continue to support the ODSP per the FERC guideline for the project until such time that the Charter Township of Ypsilanti releases ownership or the project is no longer under the jurisdiction of FERC. And whereas the ODSP document clearly defines the responsibility for the Charter Township of Ypsilanti and its employees and consultants, and whereas the purpose of this resolution is not new to the Charter Township of Ypsilanti, but rather a rededication to dam safety and the responsibilities that come with owning the project. And whereas by the action of this document, the Charter Township of Ypsilanti is showing its commitment to the FERC to operate a safe project, prioritizing safety over any other goals. And now therefore it be resolved that the Charter Township of Ypsilanti Board of Trustees acknowledges the Owner Dam Safety Program to maintain compliance with FERC and define the role of the Charter Township of Ypsilanti related to the project. I would so move the resolution.
Motion Rowe, support Swanson. Dan Michael's here. Michael Sarin is here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
In front of you is the resolution for our annual recommittance to dam safety. And then the Owner's Dam Safety Program, you know, everybody thinks of Hydro Mike, but actually it's a much bigger picture. That you have a lot of resources that are dedicated to the hydro, and a lot of it's in behind the scenes. Through, is it general support through IT or emergency preparedness through the fire department? A lot of time goes into it from start to finish. So this is kind of like the foundation of the whole safety program involving all the parties. So, thank you.
Any questions or comments from board? Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. We have a motion and support to approve Resolution 2024-01, Owners Dam Safety. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a request to approve the Washtenaw Area Mutual Aid Council, which is WA-WAMAC interlocal agreement.
So moved.
Support.
Motion Rowe, support Eldridge. I know the fire chief is here. Would you like to give a brief overview?
Sure, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I know it's a little late for that, but, so what you have in front of you, the agreement, and it is a tricky, WARMAC is how, I believe how they want to call it. Basically, there was a mutual aid agreement developed many years ago with the local communities that are responding to different emergencies, that we would help them and they would help us. Over a period of time, this agreement has needed some tweaking. It needed who's going to be responsible for this and such and forth and down the road. So in 2023, I believe, was the first time they reached out to an attorney, the Mutual Aid Association did, to try and get some clarification on who would be responsible for what, and to have a proper agreement drawn up, which was in front of you, basically just clarifying everything, that who would be responsible, the vehicles that the Mutual Aid Consortium has, who they're going to be insured through, and putting in the proper terms and stuff with the legal department that the association hired. So in a nutshell, basically, it's just bringing everything up to basically the current timelines of who'd be responsible for what. It's wrote down. When they have meetings, they're going to follow the Robert's Rules of Order. Who's going to be their chair, who's going to be their president, that type of thing. They would every year they would be changing. If the fire chief was not available to attend a meeting, his designee can be sent. If a fire chief retired, who normally would represent the township or their entity at a township board meeting, they could actually appoint one of you folks to go in the place of the fire chief to get the information firsthand until the proper fire chief was put into office. That's kind of it. There's a lot of stuff I've been working with Mr. Winters for a couple months on this, getting it to this part where we could actually get it to you folks for your approval, if you so choose to. I'd highly recommend. Most of the communities have already adopted it. It was due by February 1st, so we still got some time to get it back to them, but we were reminded at our beginning of our meeting this month that it should be on file by February 1st. With all this being said, with appropriate signatures, will be sent up to the governor for her to sign, so it's actually on an official timeline for her office as well. And I do have support of our township attorney's office to pursue, and that's why I'm in front of you tonight, just to give you my take on it, that we should, as a township, continue on for the services that we can provide other communities and they can provide us if we were to become overwhelmed or if a larger fire would happen.
Thank you, Chief. Are there questions and comments regarding the proposed agreement? Mr. Winters?
I would just emphasize that over the last decades, there's always been a lot of talk about collaboration and cooperation. And I think the fire departments throughout Washtenaw County, and in some cases outside our county, have been a shining example as to what that cooperation and collaboration looks like. If you look at the first page of that agreement, and look at all the different entities that are involved, all the townships, the cities. We even have the village of Clinton. You have all types of small townships, cities, et cetera. This is what really collaboration, this is what it looks like. I think the fire departments sometimes probably don't get as much credit as showing the leadership from the standpoint of really just paving the way as to how other entities, the communities can cooperate. So I'm very proud to see the township continue to participate in this Washtenaw Area Mutual Aid Council. The name is changed. It does so to comply with the Urban Act that also guarantees no waiver of governmental immunity. But I think the chief in his position will certainly also be a great representative of our community at these meetings. So it's a great opportunity to continue that mutual aid.
Thank you, sir.
And once again, I just pointed out that this document has Karen Lovejoy Rowe's name on it as the clerk instead of Heather Jarrell Rose. So I catch it when I can, but this one
No,
here,
it got by me too, and we'll make sure that's addressed
The
before it
address.
gets sent up.
Steve, I don't know, it maybe doesn't matter as much for you, but also like the city of Ypsilanti's are incorrect, so.
Okay. Yeah, it was put out, and then there was someone, like, he had caught it, and then they put it
Yeah.
back, so,
And if we have like the Word doc, we can fix it.
okay.
We'll touch base.
All right, perfect.
we're good at catching typos.
Absolutely. Anything else from me?
We have a motion and support. Any other questions or comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is a request to increase wages for election workers. Clerk Rowe?
Sorry, let me get there. So I just brought this forward. We haven't, as the memo says, the last time that we increased pay rates for chairs and co-chairs was 6 years ago, and the last time that we increased rates for election inspectors was 9 years ago. As you know, the county is employing a lot of election workers now, and so I did a little survey of my own. Washington County is paying $22 for chairs and $18 for inspectors. That's pretty close to what Pittsfield is doing. They're $20 for chairs and $16 for inspectors, $18 for their co-chairs. And then Ann Arbor, the city of Ann Arbor, is $22 for chairs and inspectors. So before you deny it is the proposed that we increase our rates to $22 for chairs, $20 for co-chairs, 18 for inspectors, and then the last part is that a lot of places provide food, and it's like the number one thing that I've heard complaints as I go around on election day. Our election workers are not able to leave the polls. There's just not enough time. We don't have enough cushion of staff for them to leave and come back. So just proposing that they would receive a $20 for the election day stipend. I would so move the request to increase the wages for election workers.
Motion Rowe,
Support.
support Eldridge. Questions or comments?
I do have a question, Madam Chair. So you said co-chairs and say it again, the other part.
There's chairs for 22, co-chairs for 20,
20.
and election inspectors 18.
So the election inspectors, those are the ones that work inside to,
So-
they would receive 18.
Yeah, and there are chairs. There's one chair at every inside place, and occasionally we'll have like a co-chair if they're learning or if it's like a long-term partnership of who runs those.
Okay, do they get paid for training?
They do, yep.
Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Heather, thank you for this. We say, every election is the most important election, and I do believe the upcoming one very well likely is. So I do plan to vote yes, but I had a question. Will this stand for all elections moving forward, or is this just for the upcoming elections this year?
Yeah, good question. This is for all elections moving forward. You know, it's not, we're a township that in the past, we haven't updated these like every year. And so I wouldn't imagine that they would need an adjustment for several years.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Could you help us understand how the $20 a day, if they're not able to leave the site, how does the $20 a day for food solve that problem?
Yeah, it would more or less supplement, like I could order in food, Grubhub it, and frankly, it would just make the employees feel a little more valued, like they have a little extra cushion to buy food or get something packaged ahead of time. Other places like do a whole catering situation, we don't have the staff to accomplish that, and I'm not interested in venturing into that space. So it was just a reasonable way to try and meet the need of them feeling valued, like they're being fed or taken care of in that way without having to take orders. So
I wasn't trying to imply.
No.
I wouldn't want to have them
No,
feel
it's
valued.
okay.
I just didn't understand how giving them $20 was going to help with the problem of not being able to leave site. So you're not even thinking that you would help out with the Grubhub. You're just going to say, here's $20 for food.
for you to order Grubhub, get something ahead the day before that maybe wouldn't normally, or, and you know, to me, that's, you guys, the vote is before the board. I just know that a lot of our election workers, it's something I hear every time, and a lot of other municipalities pay them. The city only does their absentee count board, but everyone else gets something of some kind, whether it's catered or a stipend.
Again, I'm not saying
Didn't take it that way.
any disrespect or not a value, just the idea. I wanted to understand how that would be a solution. So you've clarified that. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, trustees.
I just want to make a comment. This is so appropriate because the worst thing we want to do is election workers to leave the site to go to lunch. Okay?
Yes.
So it's so important. Working on many elections, this is just norm. But my question also, does the township supply coffee and bagels and stuff in the morning?
We don't. Kind of the culture of our election workplaces is that, you know, if you're working with like the same folks every election, you guys kind of like, they'll plan little potlucks, or the chairperson might call around and have everyone bring donuts in, but we do not.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering how that will work. If you've got a worker there and they want to get something to eat, will they have a stipend that they'll get, or how will they?
So this would be, if we did this $20 a day, this would just be a part of their check, you know, so they're expecting that money is going to be there and extra. It would just be added into their pay.
Okay, right. So for that day, though, say for election day, how will they be able to order food?
You got to put it on credit, John. I'm not saying that to, you know, but they'll have to, yes, it's basically a reimbursement.
Okay,
That was a better way to say it. Thank you.
Yeah, all right.
I couldn't think of a better term.
thanks.
I have just a couple questions on, so what, the city of Ypsilanti, do they not pay, why, do we not have the rates for their chairs and inspector?
Yeah, so the last time that I spoke with their current clerk / interim, they're expecting to match what the county pays. But to my most recent knowledge, they've not done that yet.
Okay, and so the $20 a day, what about the 9-day early voting? Would this apply to that? Because that,
It would. Again, just because they're not expected to be leaving the workplace site, but, you know, if we wanted to exempt that.
well, I'm just asking because I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm a budget person, so I don't know
Yeah.
how this reflects or compares to the budget that was submitted.
I did submit when we did our budget for increases to election pay.
Yeah.
I To be honest, I'd have to look back, but I don't really think the food thing was on my mind at that time. It was something when I started doing this, asking other clerks what they did and what their process was, that just became an apparent need again. I do see 9-day early voting is a little bit different. It is more like a regular workday. However, they're also not going to be able to leave the workplace.
You can leave, right?
I mean, if we have extra staff, but we usually try to kind of bare minimum. I shouldn't say that. We don't bare minimum. We try to not overstaff our precincts.
Okay. So we don't know if what you budgeted is enough for these numbers?
I
Do you think
anticipate that it will be, and if
Okay.
not, we could always come back for a budget amendment in November if needed, or
'Cause
closer to the November.
I also know we went from 19 precincts down to 11.
Yes.
So it might balance out, with the, but I don't know without knowing the numbers and how you came up. The only other thing that I did think of is, I noticed Ann Arbor doesn't have co-chairs. Augusta doesn't, and Superior doesn't, and Washtenaw County doesn't. So do we need co-chairs? I know we've had them, but I'm just asking, I wonder what the difference is and why you have a co-chair.
Yeah. The co-chairs started, prior to me, but I think that the benefit that I've seen is that it's been able to help like newer people who are interested in being chair people sort of learn underneath a chair without paying them the full rate of being a chairperson.
'Cause, yeah, the increase is from $14 to $20. So I don't know. And then I didn't know, because we didn't have a work session, this is our first meeting, and so it's good to talk it out. For me, it is. But I was wondering if you could give, like, if you work one election, you get this much of an increase, or would that be too hard to track? And then if you work two, then you're going to get another increase, and then if you work three, you get another one, and then you're tapped out. But that might be hard to do payroll, I'm thinking.
I know, I like the idea, but I think payroll might
Be a
take us
problem.
out.
That
if
would
we
be,
pass that.
because then you're rewarded for working another election,
Yeah.
But most of our work,
We give a lot of return.
yeah,
Lot.
yeah, we do. We do have a lot of return ones. So those are my suggestions, and then not knowing the budget is, I think you did.
I know that we
I want to make sure
budgeted
the budget's
for
there.
the increases. I don't believe we did for the food, but as you were saying, going from 19 to 11 is going to really help. It's already helped significantly, even in ordering our precinct kits, and I anticipate that it'll even out, and if not, we can come back if needed.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So you said it's just going to go on the pay. Typically, do these employees not get taxes taken out? Because food is not really their wages. It's, like in my business, if I go to a conference and I turn in a form, it doesn't get put into my pay. It's just a reimbursement. So taxes and stuff, so I just wondering about that.
So the way that it is set up right now is when election workers come in, we advise them to choose to take a deduction dollar amount, whether it's $5 or $10, and that's it. They don't, typically pay into Social Security or anything like that unless they work over a certain dollar amount for the year, which we have not encountered yet, but that could change and probably will change this year. But that's a good question. I just don't know how the reimbursement forms would work. I think that for the processes that we currently have in place for the township, that might be a little cumbersome on the payroll department if we did that.
Is there a way for payroll to even just list that as a food stipend, so that I don't know how that's done, but it technically really is wages. It's a food allowance. So that's just something to be thinking about.
I don't know the answer to that question. And we could, if we could check on that and see what payroll's preferences or ability are to do even a deduction. I'm not sure how that would work.
They don't give you checks. You go up, you sign out, you get the form, and they actually hand you.
Oh, your cash, you were telling me
$20,
that.
right? So I don't know what the process would be, but it's not, I mean, I do think there is a distinction. It's an allowance, it's not a wage. And maybe, I don't know, maybe someone else can tell that, but I think it's, I mean, if we're going to move to it.
No, that's a good
problem with
point.
it. So that's just something that needs to be looked at.
And, you know, the food thing in particular, like, we could, like, there's a million ways to make them feel valued and fed, and that could look like us coordinating food. And maybe that's why the other precincts or the other municipalities do it that way. It could be a deduction, like something that they would fill in. So there's a couple different choices, and I wouldn't want that particular piece to be like we could go either way on it. They've, you know. Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So Heather, are you telling me the other, Bushnell County, the various other election sites, they do?
Can you talk into the microphone, please?
They do, they can possibly designate what will be served. You know, you have a stipend on, they put what's going to be served. And is the township, do they have any ruling of doing it that way? So, in their budget?
So,
Because of, and one more part, because to me, it's like a per diem, okay? It's not, what did you call it? I forgot what you call it.
like a reimbursement? or a-
Reimbursement. Usually you go to a conference, you'll have per diem money.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if that's taxed or not. I can't remember, it's been so long ago. But that works out sometime unless you have a restaurant and you specify. You know, it's very hard to take everybody order 20 people and get off confused. You specify a couple of things on the menu to be brought in, and that means coffee in the morning or whatever. But my question is, does the township, is there any ruling that you can't do it that way?
Not
Which is more simpler.
Not to my knowledge. Like, I know that Pittsfield, they, call around and ask what people want, and they actually send them food. I know that Northfield does the same thing. They're not in here because they're kind of further north of us, but the clerk works here, and we've talked about that, and I know that they do that.
I guess my question too is, would the budget be a little bit?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like,
Adjustable if you do it that way per giving them $20 a day for lunch, So if you bring in a selective menu, would that help the budget in a way? Has anybody looked at that part?
I think that would definitely be more cost-effective than the $20 a day.
Yeah.
And I also think that, like, this could even just look like bagels and donuts and coffee in the morning,
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah.
pizza in the afternoon. But
They
then
could feed
you
20
get
people, it
into,
won't cost
Yeah.
less than $100 where you're giving these people to, and I don't mind voting to give it to them. But again, that was a good question. Is that taxed on their check? Or would it be considered per diem money for
Yeah.
a stipend?
yes.
So maybe we could look at that part too? We got time to look at it, or we?
Yeah, we do. We do.
See
have
if
time
it's,
to look at
if
that.
cost effective to the township, maybe to do it that way, and see if it would save money.
I'm sure that it is and would be cost-effective. My concern about doing that where we order is that I am already concerned that the election day is so busy for us in the office. And, maybe in-person early voting will change that, but the line out the door is just relentless on election day. And so to add on to that, troubleshooting at the precincts and then trying to order people's, I need
That's why
extra
you do a
ranch
selected menu, and
yeah.
they sign what they
Yes.
want, and it comes in.
Yeah,
You
and
see
we
what I'm
could do
saying?
that, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's like local places that
But
could,
whichever way.
so we could come back to the food thing if I can look into more options and bring that back.
And I think it's very important to see if they do get that stipend, is it tax in their
A
check?
per diem or, yes.
Yeah. Or
That's-
versus a per diem,
Yeah.
which I know.
We could approve the rates and bring back the food,
Yeah.
because I don't know the process through accounting at all. I can't.
Yeah, I'm real, not, I don't.
Sketchy.
Stan, is that a friendly amendment to bring the food piece back at a later date?
It is. I would be okay with that.
Thank you. And thank you for these, this conversation. It's helpful.
How many people are estimated for every election day?
Every election that I have overseen as the clerk, there have been usually 5 precinct poll workers, sometimes 6.
Per precinct? Okay. And I guess I was thinking from the standpoint, and like everybody else, that day, if you're busy, it's hard to order, but if the food is right there, then, that takes away that people having to worry about it. Because, if you're pretty busy, then you don't really have time to order.
To Grubhub?
Yeah,
Take
to
receipt.
Grubhub, yeah. So, but if the pizza's there or Jimmy John's is there, they can at least grab something. And then that way, you're not really getting involved with the stipend per day or
Yeah.
$20 per day.
Okay, so we have a motion and support to approve the increase for the election worker wages with the food being brought back.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 6 is request authorization for circuit court litigation to abate a public nuisance. Take out, for a property located at 1319 Davis Street, which is budgeted.
So moved.
Motion, Rowe.
Support Peterson. I'm sorry. Commissioner.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening, Belinda.
Belinda Kingsley, Community Compliance Director. And as the Chair has said, we are here regarding 1319.
Use the microphone, please. You got to speak into it.
1319 Davis Street. And this property owner is Ted Ferenzi. And we did have a previous litigation with Mr. Ferenzi. This particular one, on May 13th of 2022, is when this action started. We received a complaint from a resident, and they were concerned that an addition was being built on to an existing 3-car garage. And the resident was concerned that it didn't look like it was going to meet the setbacks from the property line. An ordinance officer inspected and confirmed that the addition had been constructed without approval with a building permit and zoning compliance, and contacted Mr. Ferenzi, advising him that he needed to file the building permit. There's, history in between there, but finally we realized this wasn't going to happen without a notice of violation that was issued on September 27th of 2022. And an application was submitted in October, but without plans for review. And we got the plans, but they were deficient for the review by the planning department. And revised plans were submitted in January of 23. And they were denied because it did not meet the setback from the side property line. Eventually, a zoning board of appeals application was filed in August of 23, and a hearing was held on September 6th of 23. The ZBA denied the variance that was requested for the side yard setback and requested or required that the property owner demolish the garage within 60 days. And Mr. Ferenzi had 30 days to appeal this ZBA ruling with the circuit court and chose not to. And the garage is still there today. So we're asking for approval to take this to circuit court litigation and try to bring closure to the situation.
Questions or comments regarding that? Mr. Winters, do you have anything to add?
I do know I have discussed this with my law partner, Dennis McLean. He spent a great deal of time with the attorney for Mr. Ferenczi to try and bring this property into compliance. At that point in time, they did proceed to the ZBA, and from what I've been told, the ZBA was very adamant that they did not wish to condone property owners proceeding without authorization, then coming back to the ZBA asking for forgiveness, which is what I think happened that evening at the ZBA, from what I've been told. And so we appoint people to these various boards and commissions to do their due diligence. And in this case, the ZBA felt very strong that a variance should not be granted. So in support of the ZBA's position, this is now where I believe Director Kingsley is at, because there has been no appeal by the property owner to appeal the ZBA decision. The ZBA decision is on the books, more or less. At this point in time, I think she is asking the board to go to court to bring this property into compliance in light of the ZBA decision. Again, I don't think the ZBA, they're very, very professional, and they grant variances where deemed appropriate. This time, they did not feel that one was warranted. And so that is what my understanding is, Dr. Kingsley, as to why you're asking the board for authorization this evening.
Any other questions or comments?
So if they had gone to the ZBA first and gotten everything out of the way, then they would be able to construct the garage, provided it didn't exceed the parameters of the place?
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Jason Icoangeli. I was actually at that ZBA meeting that evening, and the issue with this garage revolves around the fact that Mr. Ferenczi, first, Mr. Ferenczi didn't come to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. He sent his attorney. And at that meeting, Mr. Ferenczi's legal counsel admitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals that Mr. Ferenczi is a licensed builder in the state of Michigan. And at that point, the Zoning Board of Appeals felt that not only did Mr. Ferenczi build this garage addition without a permit, he's a licensed builder and should know that he needs to get a permit from the local government before he makes a decision to build a building, especially one that actually encroaches into a setback that's required per the zoning ordinance. And so the Zoning Board of Appeals felt that Mr. Ferenczi had created his own hardship by not coming to the township prior to constructing the garage addition and getting a permit, and that they did not want to set a precedent and grant a variance to someone who didn't have a practical difficulty or a hardship that wasn't self-created. I know that sounds like a lot of planning mumbo jumbo, but basically what it boils down to is the applicant pretty much knew that he needed to get a permit but didn't, and then after the fact came to the Zoning Board of Appeals to try to get relief to keep the garage addition, and the ZBA voted no, because really they should have voted no, because it violated the zoning ordinance and he created the hardship. There wasn't any other self-created or non-self-created hardship that would require him to get a variance from the zoning board.
So if he had, there probably are conditions for construction when you're trying to put something or add something on, like the roof not matching it. Wouldn't there also be other requirements other than the setback if you're creating something?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, depending on where the structure's built, had it conformed or not conformed, there could have been other things that would have been required, potentially fire ratings or different types of building material, and then clearly the applicant didn't even match the shingles to the roof or make an effort to try to make the building addition look like the rest of the building. So had he come in prior to constructing it and gotten a permit, at the time the planning department would have reviewed the application and flagged the fact that it didn't meet the setback requirement and instructed them to either reduce the size of the garage to make it conform or given the applicant some other options, to still try to get more garage space without violating the zoning ordinance. However, had they come in and even tried to seek a permit, but then said, well, can I go to the zoning board to get a variance so that I can get another bay? They would be told no, because there's no hardship or difficulty as to why you need to violate the zoning ordinance. The zoning board of appeals is for people that have like a legitimate reason why they can't follow the ordinance, like you can't put the garage in the backyard because it's on a hill, or there's a creek that runs next to the house and you can't build close to a water course or something like that.
And then going through that process, even neighbors have the ability to come to the meeting, right? And
They
speak
did,
out.
yeah, that's true.
So they already did have
Yeah,
an
so
opportunity.
there were notices sent to all neighbors
Okay.
within 300 feet, and there was a public hearing held.
Okay.
Also went to the Construction Board of Appeals to try to,
They filed the Construction Board of Appeals application, but this was, they were seeking relief of the zoning ordinance, not the building code interpretation.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't even a building code interpretation that was out there because it didn't make it past planning.
and this is a 3-unit apartment.
Yes,
It's a home.
it's a home that's been divided into multifamily, 3 units.
Yeah. Someone that lives near them brought this to our attention, right? 'Cause
Right, yeah. And
it was getting it too close to them.
Yeah. We don't know who it is, but somebody that's close enough to know that it did not meet the setback of the side yard.
It's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
sometimes for every action, there is a reaction, and
One thing
as a
ZBA
builder, that's
did
disappointing.
ZBA pointed out and asked at the meeting, could they have put it on the other side? And they would have been able to put it on the other side and
They
not
would
the
have?
setback, yeah.
Were the fences,
Well, the fence is new.
or is that the new side?
No, the fence is new, so it is where the fence is.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, and also, when you make structures, it affects the water runoff that goes onto your neighbor,
Right?
because,
More impervious surface.
yeah, it does create
Yeah.
unintended consequences sometimes that people don't. We have a motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The next item is budget amendment number 1. Clerk Rowe?
I have a motion to amend the 2024 budget. I would move to increase the compost fund budget by $33,940 to $892,557 and approve the line item changes as outlined. I'd so move the budget amendment.
Motion by Rose, support by Eldridge to do budget amendment number 1. Also included is that in our 2024 budget, we had the narrative that specifically gave the amounts and talked about the salary temporary seasonal and the salary PTO payout, but it did not go into the actual line item budget. We found there is a way to double check all these numbers to make sure every number is in, the narrative is also in the, so we apologize for that. We have a motion support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 8 on the agenda is the request under authorization and bids, request to award the professional services contract for police services cost analysis and feasibility study to the CPSM ICMA group in a not to exceed amount of $90,789, which is budgeted in line item 266-301-1800 with a line item transfer.
Hi, good evening.
Good.
So as you know, we did receive 4 bids from this proposal. I imagine timing had a factor with that coming into the holiday season, but I was happy with what we received. I think we got a great spread and a diverse spread. And then it was odd from the beginning that we did receive proposals from 25,000 up to 120,000. To be honest, I didn't imagine to see anything below 100,000. So I was pleased to see that we were right in the ballgame with 3 out of 4. The Police Steering Committee has done a wonderful job of thoroughly evaluating what was received and took their time to read through each bid and came to a consensus that our actual middle bid and the lowest bid were the only two to really address what we were asking for going into it. So there was a strong degree of confidence that the two proposals were understanding of what the township needed from the applicant. So we did bring in both of those proposals. Wanted to make sure that they had an apples-to-apples comparison. We prepared 6 questions, stayed on topic to make sure that we could really make that comparison. The 2 companies that we interviewed included the CPSM ICMA. I'd imagine you've probably heard the ICMA reference before, so that's the International Council of blah, blah, blah managers. It's public sector managers, I'm sorry. So that is the professional organization for city managers and administrators. So they've been around for, I think, nearing 100 years and have been very involved in gathering data throughout the country. So the CPSM part is the Center for Public Safety Management. So that is their wing that provides consulting. They brought with them about 450 studies along this road of evaluating public safety and costs associated with public safety. The other company, that's a long way away, I'm drawing a blank, Municipal Analytics. The other company is local. They've been in the area. I've worked with them in the past. I think they are an excellent company, but I don't know that they have the resources. And I think that's what the steering committee came back with is, you know, if a FOIA were not to be successful, that they may not be able to get any closer to putting together the numbers. Where ICMA gave the assurances that they could build a budget of how it should look, and they could do that with their internal data. So, you know, they definitely had the resources at their fingertips. I think the steering committee was also impressed that like 2 of the 8 people dedicated to the project team actually hailed from Michigan as well. So they're very familiar with the township structure. They knew right away what a charter township was. The other 2 companies, we would have had to start very basic with, you know, what's the difference between a township and a charter township. So it's the recommendation of the 3 steering committee members, along with the 2 of us that didn't really count. But we all felt the same way that ICMA was really offering a good, solid proposal. They understood the need to know what the budget implications are, to understand what the cost is. They did not jump right away to, should we build our own police department? They really focused to the question of how much does it cost? So, you know, I think we heard, everyone here heard loud and clear that, you know, we need to understand the costs. And I think this group definitely understands that. So they're based out of DC, but they will come for public engagement. They'll be a part of that. And then otherwise, I think we're very comfortable meeting by Zoom until a final presentation where they will come to council. So they said we will have dedicated teams. The team that is going to do the work will be with us from beginning to end. So as you scan through the proposal, you'll see who that team is, and that team is going to be our contacts throughout the life of the proposal. So we have not reviewed the contract yet, but I think representing the steering committee tonight, we're making the recommendation to the full board and asking for your support to have the township attorney then negotiate, contractual terms and do it in an amount not to exceed the 90,000 figure. Can you scroll down just a little bit? Thank you. The 90,789. So to top off, get ahead of this question, the $78,000 figure is just to get to the numbers. So they'll do that back end research on how much it costs by looking at how many calls and using CAD data and FBI data to get back to that number, and then using national comparisons for similar size communities. So the 78,000 is just that. The 90,000 figure was to include an approximate cost of what it would take to build that department. So it's that one step. It's not putting together a department. It's providing a basic outline of what would be the next step. So for $12,000, they will spend an additional month putting together what would be the next steps. So it's our recommendation to approve in that total amount, and then to get this kicked off with a consultant.
Questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I could, and I know the board knows this, but for the community members that are present, we've reached this point because of our inability to get the numbers from the county administration, the sheriff's office administrative information. We have tried for at least the past 18 months to do a fuller dive into what the cost of police services is when contracted from the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office. That attempt to get those numbers was in part motivated by the current contract that we're now under that saw a dramatic increase. So this proposal, this recommendation, is simply to do exactly what our RFP said, and it's to do a cost analysis of what we are receiving now for services, and are we paying an appropriate cost. For the last several months, and I saw it again today, and I said I was going to address it this evening, there is a lot of misinformation being put out in this community by certain members, by certain groups, that I, for one board member, just don't want to tolerate any longer. This is not a proposal to start an Ypsilanti Township Police Department. It never has been about that. It's about a cost analysis. When this RFP speaks to a feasibility study, it's simply to show us, should we decide to move to step 2 of this RFP, what those costs may be. If the first part of this proposal comes back and says we are paying an appropriate amount for the services we are receiving, in my opinion, at that point, we are done. and we remain where we're at. But this information that's going out and around this community, that a vote tonight to authorize this study is a step to start a police department, is simply flat out wrong and disingenuous for people to say. This is a chance for us to look and do our due diligence as 7 board members to ensure that the money we're spending, that we are getting the services in return for that. Should we ever get to the point where this discussion moves forward, there is a component in the RFP and in this process that not only includes an engagement of township board members, legal staff, consultants, staff members, but also the community members, so they can come in and voice what they would like to see if we ever got to that point. So for anyone to, again, to say in any way, shape, or form that Ypsilanti Township, by an action tonight, is starting their own police department is absolutely, without question, 100% wrong. This is simply a cost analysis study. And I just wanted to emphasize that because it gets a little bit troublesome to keep hearing people try to divide a community when there is no reason to do that. So I apologize to my board members, John and Ryan, if they want to speak up, but I just had to get that out.
Yeah, residents can speak on any agenda item, so please give your name and if you're a township resident.
Yeah, Jane Wolf, I am a township resident. This is more of a feelings-based statement than anything, but $90,000 sure is a lot of money. And knowing that, like, I agree, I would love to know what we're paying for, make sure that it makes sense that we're paying for that. I'm all in favor of that. I guess it's more just kind of frustrating that maybe you guys share this frustration, obviously, that Washtenaw County Sheriff is just unwilling to give us these numbers and then making us pay $90,000 when they're actually sitting on $6 million that they're not doing anything with. It just seems like maybe legally there's something we could do about that. Like, that seems wild to me that we have to foot this bill. And I'll also just say briefly, too, that as a resident who, to be honest with you, is critical of the way that communities are policed, I am not hearing a lot of that misinformation. So maybe just to put your mind at ease that, like, as somebody who is speaking out about this, that I am really clear that this is not about, I was never under any illusion that tonight was about whether or not to create our own police department. But given how frustrating it's been to work with Washtenaw County Sheriff, given the reports that have already come out on, like, the systematic racism that happens within the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Department, that, like, breaking with them would actually be probably a benefit. So, yeah, that's all. $90,000 is just so much money, and, you know, people need that money locally. So it's just very frustrating to me that now we have to foot that bill when the Sheriff's Department is just sitting on literally millions of dollars that they have no plan for, nor any obligation to tell us what they're going to do with it. So, right. Cool. Yeah.
Thank you for your comment. Any other comment?
Yeah, I have a few. So, Trustee Eldridge, thank you for your comments, because I share the concern about misinformation. We purposefully designed the RFP with your help, with very specific things in place, which included community engagement and included all of this. So to say those things and specifically said that it was not going to be about creating our own police department, it is concerning. I'm looking at page, I don't know if it's got a page number. But in the proposal, it says proposed services, and then it cautions us at the first pinch point they usually experience as data. Mm-hmm. And so one of the concerns I have is we already know the pinch point is there because we experienced the pinch point. So I don't know if they gave any clarity around that when they were presenting. So that would be my first question.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that. That was one of our specific questions to both of our candidates was what happens when we hit that pinch point, because we feel confident we will. And ICMA had the best response, and I was hinting at it earlier, is they have access to reported data, surveyed data, and CAD data that they'll use to recreate what the cost would be based on the number of calls, which is data that we have, but will take hours to comb through. The average cost associated with the officers, average costs associated with vehicles. So they have the formulas, they set formulas and have a history of doing this and putting out publications about it. So they're going to give us what they can't give us in actual numbers. They're going to give us the number that should be based on being in Washtenaw County, the officer salaries, and the amount of calls and amount of time spent in the township. So we may never get an actual number from Washtenaw County, but what we will get from ICMA is how much it should cost. And all we can... No, I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah. And then if that's incorrect, then it's going to be the onus to whoever's withholding the numbers to prove why it's wrong. Because we're going to have a scientifically created number that the variables are going to be listed in front of you to see how that number was created and then tell us why it's wrong.
Assumed, like, benefits that we have from a contract that we really don't have any idea whether, we had a place where I think, I don't know if it was a meeting or if it was something that somebody said where someone was experiencing a mental health crisis and police reported, and we don't have any way, and the question was asked, were people there? Were they not there to help? Because we have this service, but we don't really know, how often are people being dispatched to help in that way? It sounded like the hours of when that dispatch can happen are limited because of, I don't know. There's just so much that we do not know that we're being told is just services that are being provided, but it's not parsed out for us to know, what's happening in that way. And then I will say, and again, collaboration is a good thing. We had the municipal agreement, and that's a good thing, but we get reports every month of in-service hours, out-of-service hours, and I don't want to say always, but almost always, out-of-service hours is maybe 3 pages, and an in-service hour is a half a page to a page. And so is that going to factor into this feasibility, or is...
Yeah, so, again, going on the best way to evaluate the situation is going to be to take similar experiences outside of the township. So we were given an example in Jupiter, Florida, one specific example that was about 60,000 residents. They had a county local agreement, and then they did the same thing. They, got down to a per service cost and then built what it would take for them to do it on their own. And it ended up, maybe one of the guys can remember, about a savings of 12 million?
It was
Do
a
you
little
recall?
bit larger because they were doing all emergency first responses.
EMS as well.
Police, fire, EMS. They were paying out roughly $60 million a year to the county for those services. When this group went in and analyzed that over a period of time, they came back and said, well, you could really do this on your own for roughly 9 to 10 million. Big savings, big difference. So I'm not saying that's what we'll get here, but
No, but I think, the heart of your question is how is that determined? It's determined because policing isn't unique to the township. Policing has data points that'll be used everywhere. What's unique is how that response happens, and unless you are in control of that response, you really can't dictate how it happens.
Other trustees feel the same way. Yes, 90,000 is a lot, and there's frustration with that cost to get information that we rightfully should have and that residents should have as for the costs go. We've tried, which I'm not saying anybody said we haven't tried. I mean, our preference would have been to just have it given so that we could understand it. Without that, I think it is important to know what we are paying for and make sure that that matches what we're paying for. So I share that frustration. It just seems like a really forward thing when you're talking about public safety. I mean, we should understand that. So, but again, like Trustee Elder just said, this is a feasibility study with the cost analysis. I mean, really, the cost analysis was the point of why we went into it. And with, like, I was thinking the same thing, Trustee Eldridge, if it comes back that what we're paying is accurate, then the other section of that, I think it was 12,000 or 17, 12,
Right.
roughly,
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily be needed. But with the relationship the way it is and not understanding it, it's our due diligence fiscally to make sure that we understand those numbers.
But I would-
Trustee
Oh.
Hunter?
Yes, thank you. So let me just first, a couple of comments. I don't know how well put together they'll be. So let me first say thank you to Beth and Stan and to John and to Attorney Winters. So far, this process has been informative and it has been insightful, and I think we've made some good headway in moving toward clarity. This whole venture, it really is about clarity. It's about understanding what we're getting, what services that we're currently are paying for, and making sure we're getting the best value for all of our dollars. I think we have a right to know that. In this community, Ypsi Township, we have a right to protect ourselves. We have a right to maintain safety in throughout all of our community. And we sometimes, it's been said, a term, trust and verify. That's what we're in the process of doing, is verifying. I do understand what members of the community, what is being said. And some of what's rumored out there is false. This is just an exploration at this point. We aren't committing to a definitive creation of a police department. However, if we find that that makes sense, then that might be the next step. We are currently, I believe, one of the only, if not the only, community in Washtenaw County that doesn't have its own police force. So that makes us something of an outlier. And if the numbers come back and they square, as Stan said, then that's, I think, the end of the conversation. But it's unfortunate and a little disappointing that the county or the sheriff's office won't just provide those numbers to us. If they would be a bit more cooperative, I think that would bring a lot of ease and would settle much of what we're doing right now. And once we get the numbers back, the county, I keep saying county, the sheriff's office, I would welcome them to make another offer to us that might be in line with what we're getting. And I hope they use this opportunity to reflect on that and maybe provide us with an alternative offer that is a bit more reasonable than what we've been given thus far. But this has been an ongoing saga. I mean, this is something that's been going on, as Stan said, 18 months. And we haven't made a lot of progress there. So I welcome that conversation with the sheriff's office if they'd like to, come back to us and say, hey, upon further reflection on our part, we do have something a bit more fair for you. But we have the right to defend our community, and that's all we're attempting to do here, is to not only defend the community, but make sure the community is getting the best value for the dollar. And that's it. Those are my comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Ryan. Trustee Newman?
I would just like to add that Trustee Eldridge and Trustee Ryan have made good points. And, as it's been through this process, to put it in context, the reason that we have decided to move in this direction was because initially the sheriff came to the township saying that the next 3 or 4 years there's going to be a rise every year in the fees that we're going to be charged. Not that better service is going to be offered, not that more people will be offered, but the costs will rise substantially per police service unit. So when we attempted to get the information to see to get an understanding as to why these costs would be going up, we only got information, vague information that did not provide us the information that we wanted. So it is, to me, to us, it is our due diligence, like everyone is saying, to investigate, because we have not received this cooperation. It's up to us to investigate as stewards of the finances, to investigate if there's another way. But this only has come as a result of the sheriff's non-cooperation with the township. And so 90,000 is a lot. However, if the result is to save money in the long run, then the sheriff pushed us to this point.
Thank you. Any other board member comment?
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
You want to get ready?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Regina Kudla on Valley Drive in Ypsilanti Township. And I'd like to say that as a taxpayer and someone who's asked to vote for a millage over and over and over for law enforcement departments, and for them to believe or think or whatever, act in a way that is not accountable for the money that the communities are giving to them, and a lack of transparency, I find to be pretty disturbing. And I know that $90,000 sounds like a lot, but we need the information. How much does it cost for you as individuals to try to get that information, and you're not getting it in the number of hours that you're spending, and not being able to obtain the information in an efficient way that the consulting firm would be able to get the information, not from the sheriff's department, but the information that we need to help support our case of why we have these questions. So I think I would support paying for that service. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just leave a fact on the table real quick?
Sure.
I think everyone said, everyone's saying the 90,000. Just want to remind everyone that the next fiscal year, there's a $6 million increase that's unaccounted for. So I just want to leave that on the table real quick. I didn't mean to interrupt, but we're looking at a $6 million increase in the contract. Sorry, there's a let me clarify for the record.
Madam Chair.
A $6 million increase in the contract amount.
All right.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask a question to follow up to that. Can you please pull back and expand on what that $6 million contract increase is?
Sure. So the township has had a contract with, and this is really just for public edification, contractual agreement to provide services to Ypsilanti Township. That contract does typically see an increase that's equal with cost of living expenses that go up annually, no different than personnel expenses for the township. However, there is in the contractual agreement an increase that is no longer consistent with cost of living increases that goes from X to Y in the difference of $6 million. So, and that's a cost to the township to provide services over the next 2 years.
I'm not sure if those are accurate numbers, but
Okay,
I know
we can-
you may know more. And
Yeah,
I just know there's a
that's a
substantial
round-
increase, yeah.
It's a round number. You know, I'm not going to split hairs over numbers, but
Yeah.
the 90,000 is less than a tenth of that increase to have bargaining power and or numbers to justify to the residents. So just wanted to kind of put that out there for understanding.
Well, just from my perspective, if I could just reflect for a moment, because a lot of things are being said, the thought that a county department will not open their books seems illegal to me. I'm not saying it is, but I don't even understand how that happens. My understanding from Administrator Greg Deal is that, and this was before him, the sheriff entered into an agreement with the county Board of Commissioners that they will not oversee, have access to their funding. Once they're given the funding, then to the Sheriff's Department, then it can be retained and does not have to be returned like it has been in the past. So that was something very new, but if you FOIA something, Sheriff Clayton has to respond. It's not his money, it's taxpayers' money. And I think it's important to know that we do an audit of our books every year. And to do an audit of one of the largest budgets within our budget, we need a forensic audit to make sure. And once you do it, the larger audit, you could probably do an annual audit at a much lesser cost. But we need the numbers. It's Treasurer Eldridge was with me, and we went to the meetings, and the number in 2026, the cost of a PSU is $244,315. That includes a lot of things, and this is what we need to analyze. Another issue we have is Ypsilanti Township, and I know all the townships are in that contract are in the same position. We contract for 35, which means that we have to take 35 deputies times the yearly cost, and we make a payment monthly for those numbers. And we know that they've never had 35. They're more at 30. At a neighborhood watch meeting, they're at less. And that's nationwide, but we're still paying that money. So we're paying almost $1 million when we know we don't have those deputies. So hopefully this company will see that and see that's not a good way of doing business. You should pay for the number of deputies that you have, because we know for years they have not had them since 2018. They have not been at full staff since 2018. So we need to rectify that. In 2010, we did a study similar. We did it with the city of Ypsilanti. And then in 2013, we sat down with the sheriff and had a group of people. So I'm not sure what happened. I know COVID, and people hate when I say that, COVID's over. But I think a lot of things happened during COVID, and light was not necessarily shined on things, and now they are. And the fact that I don't believe, I don't want to believe that our sheriff will not provide the information. I don't want to believe it. And if it's through a FOIA, he has to, is my absolute position on that. And I think that this will help not only Township, but the other contract communities to get a better understanding and to see if it's a fair cost, because we don't know. In addition to that, the study, from what I read, is going to look at Ypsilanti Township pays $1 million for public safety and mental health. And if you have your own department, then they refund that money to the communities that have their own department. And Ypsilanti Township has no idea, and neither does any other community, know what's happening with that extra dollars. So, I think that mental health, they do a report all the time. We know more about what's happening there. I have no clue what's going on with the extra dollars for the sheriff's department, and it's millions. It was said he has $6 million in a fund balance. I'm not sure if that's mental. I don't know. And he gets frustrated when anyone asks questions. So this is the professional way to perform an obligation to our taxpayers, which is a financial obligation to make sure that we are getting what we pay for. And I think that's all. It's a forensic audit, and I think a lot will come out of it. And I think we might want to look at doing more of a audit moving forward every year to make sure that when we contract with the sheriff's department, that we know we're getting the money's worth that we're paying. So this is no reflection on our sheriff's staff and the deputies and those who, are sworn to protect us. So I hope people know that as well. It's really about accountability, and it's time that people are held more accountable than they have been in the last 3 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Erica Tebbins, I'm a Township resident. Is the $1 million for mental health, is that annually, or is it annually? Okay.
It's $1 million. It's more than $1 million. It's $1 million.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Actually, I think one of the questions I had was what was the contract increase? But I think she answered it with $6 million. Oh. And was the contract renewed for, is it 5 years? Is that what the renewal was for, or am I incorrect in that?
It goes until 2026, so.
Oh, until 2026. Oh, okay, so a couple years. And is it, going through this and finding out and everything, are we legally able to break a contract or revise a contract, or how, and maybe you can't answer that right now, but I'm just curious, but especially because I'm just wondering, and you kind of asked it as well, Supervisor Stumbo, just now, but I'm just curious if it's even legal to have a contract where we don't know the parameters, because I run a business and I have contracts, and if I'm not clear on what I provide or I don't provide something, somebody could ask for a refund and I have to give it, legally, if I'm not following through on my obligations of what I've promised that somebody's paid for. So
we do get a refund. If we contract for 35, we'll get a refund on the deputy positions that were not filled. And then there's banked hours. There's all kinds of intricacies in that contract that the sheriff is aware for, and that a PSU unit is different than just one deputy. And we get police services. What I don't know is what is the cost of a police service? And they just throw out numbers and increases. They give you a grant from Ypsi Township taxpayers, because we're paying for it. That I don't understand how that money is being accounted for either.
Yeah.
And this study hopefully will shine a light on that as well.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just wondering, like, even to your point about, like, if it's township money, we should be able to FOIA it and know. Like, I'm just wondering, like, in what world, does it make sense? Agreeing with you that, like, where you would sign a contract and it would make sense for them to be like, we're withholding, we're not going to be fully transparent. So I'm just wondering, like, if it comes to light that they're not, and we have to change direction, like, are we even allowed to renegotiate a contract before the term is up? And maybe you don't have that answer. I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
If I could just answer her one question.
Yeah.
The sheriff has provided some numbers, but they're big bucket. And when you ask to then get inside that bucket and break it down even more, that's where the disconnect is. We can't get specificity on those numbers.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Hi, Ted Weiser, 610 North Miami in the Township. Just had a question for the steering committee or for the whole board here. If you can answer now or we can meet afterwards. Just when you were presenting the 78,000 versus the additional 12, is there any way, or would the plan be to have that staged so if it did turn out that the numbers were kind of satisfactory on the sheriff's office for the $78,000, and there wasn't going to be an interest in going forward with a separate department, would we be able to save that extra $12,000, or does this contract need to include all of that, whether we're going to really need that additional or not?
Good question. It is parsed out. So it's a two-phase. So
okay, good.
When you read their proposal, it's a number for the first phase. Should a second phase be desired, that's the second number. If not, then you don't spend that money that's allocated.
That was my question. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Beth and the committee, these are more questions for the specifics of the project. It seems to me that, like, at the end of the milestones, we're given a deliverable of just a report, which will be a full document that's provided. Like, that's the end deal of all of it. Within that, they talk about, I know that there's like the first two parts, and before they certify the data, will someone from the committee or yourself be involved in that process, or at least understand where their numbers came from? I'm thinking about, like, if they use the CAD data, are they going to be pulling from places that are similar? Like, and I know they worked in Kent County, which has a university similar to us and similar-ish in size. But just so, later on, we're not like, oh, wait, you didn't study this part. It sounds like, yes, that you guys will be involved in that piece of it.
Two-part answer to that is, yes, we will be involved throughout the process. But not just the steering committee. There will be public involvement throughout. So there will be an opportunity not just for the steering committee to say, hey, did you look at Kent County? We have it requested and set up for multiple points of information sharing to allow for multiple levels of input. So that was important to us to be able to share that input throughout the process, not just at the end in a report.
Okay. I did see that there's like the community team or the stakeholders, and, just like, do they have a process that they normally use to identify those individuals, or and when you're talking about stakeholders, are you picking them just at random from the community, or are they people that have utilized the police services, you know, because I know
Yeah.
we want to know what like the quality is and if people are being informed of their, you know, investigation and how those are going. So are they members who have actually utilized the Washington County services or is it at random?
Yeah, so they're gonna start by asking the steering committee, where should we start? And then we'll compile a list that says, you know, from the public side here, from the private side here, and then from community side here. And then after that, once they've had the opportunity to review that, then they'll go further into a volunteer stakeholder who wants to be involved.
Okay.
So there will be people involved who have input into the budgeting process, who have input into responses, and then there will be a volunteer component of who wants to be involved.
Okay. And then I think I can wrap it up in one more point. But so the last bit is where you actually look into the culture of the sheriff's department. And I found it interesting that there's no police to person ratio, but then they reference a white paper that says 60% of their work should be focused on patrol. So like, to me, that equates eventually to a person to deputy ratio. And then just with the culture piece, and I know they're not local, which is fine, but you know, it says that there's an on-site visit, but then in there it says it's either a Zoom or in person, and I would just like to advocate that it is in person. I know it'll cost money to get them here and to stay here. I just think it's really hard to understand the culture of a place or of a group of people without like being there in person. And you know, if I don't know, your boss is on the Zoom meeting, maybe you won't share all the things, and so I think that in person would be really beneficial. And so just to say that, and then just to sum it up, you know, I think the points of this, again, wasn't intended for us to start our own police department. And I think these studies are good. Anytime that we can look at like a service we're contracting for and making sure that we're getting our money's worth and our tax dollars are being utilized. It reminded me actually of last year, we did a similar thing with OHM, where we had them look into, you know, all the roads that needed to be redone and had them independently review those roads and their PASER ratings. And to me, I see this in a similar light of we're just reviewing the product that we're getting and making sure that it's a good use of our funds. We would do these things in our own homes. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to diminish this big topic down to something as like energy efficiency, but like we all make sure that we've got LED lights in and we turn the lights off and we are mindful about water usage and stuff like that to be better fiduciaries of our own money. And so that is simply what we're doing here. And as Supervisor Stumbo said, I do think that it will help the other contracted communities too. You know, this information isn't just going to be ours, it's going to be for everyone in the county to see. And I only see that as a benefit of helping our neighbors as well. So thank you for your work on it, and thanks to the committee.
All right, Mr. Winters?
Yeah, Madam Chair, this is really kind of another one of those moments where the township finds itself at a crossroads. It's very unfortunate to be here this evening to talk about this. One thing that keeps being overlooked is the township taxpayers send 6 mills to Washtenaw County government on top of what we're paying for police services, on top of what we're paying for the mental health and millage. Ypsilanti Township has always paid more than its share to ensure the public safety of its residents. And in fact, I think right now, one thing came clear from those interviews, other communities are also questioning what is going on with these numbers. It's somewhat of a misnomer to really refer to this as being a contract in the normal sense, because there are no negotiations. When they come up with a number, it's more of a take it or leave it. It's not one that's really, we sit across the table and you're bargaining in good faith. It's a number that they come up with. It could be 3%, could be 4%. It's the numbers. But right now, the numbers are very staggering that we have a 4-year contract. This is the second year of that 4-year contract. And by 2026, the township will be paying out nearly $7 million in total for police services. And I think it's very embarrassing. I think it's very, very unfortunate that we're given a document to sign that says, here it is, and if you don't sign it, oh well, you have no police services, basically. And so the township, once again, is behind the 8 ball. We're having to figure out what is the true cost. What is the actual cost of providing police services to Ypsilanti Township? And if I hear the word transparency one more time come out of the Sheriff's Department, I'm not sure what my reaction is going to be, but that is probably the most overused word that I've heard, and it has very little meaning behind when they say that, because if you're being transparent and if your costs really are what you say they are, what harm is there to sit down with the committee appointed by this board to actually review those numbers? But to call this a contract as if we have any say-so, there was a time when the township was probably the longest contracting community with the Sheriff's Department going back to the 1960s. And the township, again, has always paid its bills in regards to contractual services, but we've never had a situation like this right now where we can't get information. It's embarrassing to even have to use the word FOIA. Why should we have to FOIA numbers that are being sent, dollars that are being sent over to the county and to the county sheriff's department from township taxpayers, either by millage or by contract? These are public dollars, and the township has a right to know how these dollars are being spent. Right now, we're negotiating with the firefighters. We're proceeding in a good faith exchange of information. This is not a contract in the sense that you sit down and actually have a quid pro quo where you can exchange information and negotiate in a very intelligent fashion. Each year, since 2012, all they do is simply send another 4-year amendment to the cost they came up with in 2012. There's really no explanation. It's simply, here's what it is. And I don't think it's asking too much to simply say, if you're going to charge the taxpayers of this township nearly $7 million by 2026, simply at least justify, show, validate, verify any adjective you want to choose. Show us where the money's going. So we know where it's coming from. It's coming from the township. Don't know how it's being expended, how you're calculating the cost of a PSU. I do think this consultant right now has the ability to, they can go the FOIA route, they can do any number of models to know what the true number is going to be. They've been doing this now for a number of years. They looked at over about 450 different municipalities, and they know pretty much exactly sometimes where certain things are hidden from the general public they can find. And I'm very confident right now that that if what we're paying is truly the right number, they'll tell us that. And if it's not, they'll tell us also. But again, it's unfortunate that we have to be in this situation to spend additional dollars just to find out how you calculate what you're charging us to begin with. And that's why I think it's very unfortunate. It's been going on for 25 years. And but at some point in time, you have to at least determine the sustainability of this model that they're utilizing right now, because right now we have no way of verifying the cost and to justify exactly what the numbers are telling us. And then on top of that, many of our deputies are sent to other parts of the county, neighboring jurisdictions, on and on and on. But we need to know, and Township has a right to know.
Thank you. Any other comments? Sounds like we hashed it out. Thank you to the residents who participated as well in the conversations. We have a motion and support. Oh, we don't have one?
So moved.
Support.
There's a motion by Eldridge, supported by Hunter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. There's no other business at this time. Public comments. If there, any resident would like to go to the microphone and give their name, and if they're a township resident, and now is the time to do so.
Hi again, Jane Wolf. I'm a resident. I'm just going to bug you guys again about making these meetings more accessible. Hopefully could get it video recorded, perhaps even allowing for public comment virtually as well would be really amazing. COVID is as bad as it was at the beginning of Omicron, and so a lot of people don't feel safe coming to meetings like this or cannot. Also, it would be amazing, actually, if public comment could go back towards the beginning again, just because it feels like I would hope that our public comments are useful in the things that are getting approved or not. And so not really having, I know we get to speak on it as each item comes up, but like having that designated time in the beginning to really hear from us before decisions are made, I do feel like is really important and helpful. So, I do like the mashup. It makes it a lot easier to come and actually see the whole thing rather than having the work session ahead of time. Yeah, that's kind of a great improvement, because then, although I love these meetings, don't really want to sit here for 4 hours. But I think it is important, like in the theme of accessibility, like really allowing people to come make their comment early would be amazing. And also live stream this. It's not that hard. I think it would be such a massive improvement and probably lead to a lot more community engagement as well. So I know a lot of members, you know, I was trying to remind people, like, the first meeting is today, and people are like, I can't come, I wish I was on Zoom. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So it would definitely be, I think, a huge benefit to people to have multiple ways to access these meetings. So
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Hearing none, board member updates, are there?
Madam Chair, I guess I'll just add briefly to Mrs. Wolf's point, is that I was contacted by someone. Anyways, I have not forgotten that, and am just, it's in the queue of things we're working on. So if I actually get to talking to any of the companies that do those sorts of things, I'll definitely include the other 2 full-time elected officials, and, you know, so know that I have not forgotten. We have not forgotten about the points that we talked about last time. The election is underway, and so hopefully you guys have received your absentee ballots or your ballot selection forms. Ballots are to be available on Thursday, and so we're busy working away in the clerk's office. Just as a reminder to everyone, early voting will start on February 17th through the 25th. Those sites will be here and at the community center. Any resident of the township can go to either of those sites, and the election day is on the 27th. This is, you know, once every 4 years, we have to tell people what kind of ballot we want. And so just as a reminder that you do have to declare if you want a Republican ballot, a Democratic ballot, or if you live in the Van Buren School District, you can select the proposal only. Again, once every 4 years, we didn't make the rules. We're just trying to follow them. And if you guys have any questions about voting, please contact our office.
Any other comments?
I attended the West Willow meeting last night, and it would be helpful if we reached out a little bit, I think, maybe to the president. I don't know if Joanne's the president, just about the progress or where we are with the community center that's over there. So I know that we were going to split up the work, and we've been able to tell them that, but I think giving an update would be good there. And they have made arrangements for to just take a whole year and not be inside the facility, I think is what I heard them say, in an effort to make sure that the work can get done. So I think it would be helpful if we communicated that with them.
Couple things, the recycle magnets and the recreation brochures. I'm not sure if people have received them or not, but they were mailed, and I know several residents have received them. Of course, I haven't, but anyways. But I'm glad they were delivered. They were late than expected, and that will not happen next year. Number 2 is that we offered a job to a person for a HR assistant, and we are very excited about welcoming this person in about 2 weeks. So a lot of help for our HR manager who does an amazing job on behalf of the township with just a one-person department. We also, our fire trucks should be delivered by the end of January is the goal. Chief, nod your head if that's still the expectation. So that's exciting. We've been waiting for a long time for that. We also are in negotiations with Attorney Winters and then HR manager and myself with the fire department, and those are going well. Gathering lots of information. We have another meeting this Thursday. The LED replacement project for the lighting in the neighborhoods, we're about 45% complete with the final phase, and that'll make 100% complete the high-pressure sodium and mercury vapor to LED lighting, and which will save dollars also for the residents who participate in a street lighting assessment. We have discussed with the chief about HVA and the delivery or lack of services that we're receiving for ambulances. And I guess they're having problems hiring as well, but they have a contract with Washtenaw County. We hope to meet with some of our county representatives and see what we can do to better the service to the residents when they call 911 for a medical emergency. Our fire department and our sheriff department actually makes it there very quickly, and the fire department stays and administers aid to the level that they can. But, I mean, they're like sometimes 20 and 30 minutes out for a HVA ambulance. And in Washtenaw County, I have learned that we have an exclusive agreement with HVA to provide ambulance services. Other counties have more multiple choices, so if HVA is busy or doesn't have staff, at least you can go to someone else. That's not the case here, is my understanding. So we hope to have a meeting on that and bring back, hopefully, an improvement to services for our residents with medical needs in the township. That's it. And yes, thank you. Due to the weather, Waste Management couldn't get down some of the roads or up the hill for some of the roads for recycling and garbage pickup. So it's delayed, they said one day, but it's actually could be more based on the weather that we're having. So they'll get to it, but they can't get to it right now because they can't get up the roads. So we'll keep people updated on our news alert and we apologize for any delays, but we can't control it. So I'm not going to get upset over things that I can't control this year. I'm committed to it. So, thank you. Motion to it. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. Supervisor Stumbo, Commissioner Hunter, Treasurer Eldred, myself, and Commissioner John Newman. Did I see you, Ryan? We all attended the Martin Luther King Day celebration at Eastern. It was very delightful. Had a great time. Also, I think Supervisor Stumbo, myself, Heather, and Ryan attended Thurston and Holmes Lay Gardens last week, a residents meeting. So we like to hear from the community. They had some little issues over there, nothing big, but we like to hear from the community and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, one quick thing.
Trustee Hunter?
Thank you so much. I'll be brief. But I've received a couple of messages about the community center, about the lighting in the community center. And we've had some requests for, at first there was a request for a light, just in general. I think there was a bad light bulb out there. But now I've had additional requests for brighter lighting. So just curious if that's something that we could maybe look into.
Yeah, I know that John Hines has already had a meeting with DTE, I think, or a contractor. I'm not sure if those are DTE or to come out and look at the lights.
Yes, so last week we had AF Smith out, and they replaced a ballast on one of the light poles as well as lights in two of the other light poles. So the lights should be better, but I did get a call from the front desk staff that there was still some complaints about the brightness of the lights, so I will give them a call tomorrow morning and have them back out, because I know, especially being back a little bit further from the road that are the DTE lights, it can be dark, and we don't want anybody to trip or fall, especially this time of year. So we'll get them back out there tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So move. Support.
All in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned at 8:12. Thank you.